Hi guys and welcome back to the channel. Today I want to continue the series in which I review a stock of the week and basically share with you my thoughts on the company and whether I think it's worth to invest or not. And in this week's video, I'm going to be reviewing a company that you probably know by now I really love. As you can see right here in front of me, my laptop, my phone, my watch, a lot of the items I have from the company, and yes, you guessed it, no other than Apple. I'll be honest, I'm a big Apple fanboy. I've been using the products for many years now, even though in the beginning I was quite hesitant to use them. I was always a Windows guy and loved all the products, but eventually I made the transition, and since then I never looked back. I love the process, the ecosystem is just so smooth. And full disclosure, I do own some Apple shares myself as well. As you can see right here, my current portfolio. Apple is around 5% of my current portfolio. Obviously, the annual income in terms of dividend is very little because they have a very low dividend yield. And actually, the last time I bought it was back in 2022, so quite a while ago. Just bought it at the time, held on ever since. And today, obviously, after the review, I'll tell you if I'm going to plan to buy more of it in the future or whether I plan to actually sell it. I would probably been better off, instead of investing all my money into the Apple devices, investing into the Apple stock. Looking at the historic returns, I probably would have made a good fortune from that, but well, it is what it is. Now, in this review, I don't want to focus too much onto the last quarter earnings because a lot of people, they do videos on this, they miss their earnings a little bit less than what analysts predicted, and the end of the world, you know, the stock reset, and everybody makes the drama and so on. But I think Apple obviously is a massive, massive company. In fact, it remains to be the most valuable company in the world by quite a margin, ahead of Microsoft and then Saudi Aramco. Almost a 3 trillion market cap, which they actually have reached in the past. But yeah, obviously a behemoth company. Rather than focusing on the last quarter earnings, it's important to see the big picture, where the revenue comes from, and what is the future road ahead for Apple. And that's what I want to try to do and give you the information in that video. So with this, let's get started. Now, obviously, I'm just a random guy on the internet, but when we see some of the most successful investors in the world having invested in Apple not so long ago, Mr. Warren Buffett, a real inspiration for me and many other investors, actually said Apple turned out to be one, if not the best investment he has ever done. And even now, Warren Buffett said it remains Berkshire's portfolio's best business. That's quite a statement to make for such a powerful and knowledgeable investor like himself. And moreover, in addition to their current stake of 5.6% ownership in Apple, he said he could potentially see himself adding more of it in the future. So this really is a confidence boost into the stock. And when we head over to Data Roma, we can track super investors' activities. We can also see that Apple is currently owned by 15 different super investors. And it's quite interesting to see when you see some of the portfolio managers and what they're doing. Some of them are adding, some of them are selling. So quite interesting. Even Berkshire Hathaway, they're backing up their words with action. So they've been adding recently even more, despite the fact that already the total portfolio of Berkshire Hathaway is 46% consisting of Apple. I mean, that's a big position they already have. And then you can see here some others, such as Terry Smith. They've been adding Apple worth of 221 million. I mean, that's quite a substantial investment over there. So yeah, you can see obviously some others, they're selling, they're capitalizing on the gains in recent months, but others are adding. So definitely a very actively traded stock for sure. Now, when we look at some of the numbers here for Apple, obviously it's been a real growth story for the year so far. I mean, it's been growing despite the recent setback. It has been growing since the beginning of 23 by already 42%, which is really nice growth. Of course, when we go to 5 year, the growth is staggering at 241%. And if you would have invested 10 years ago, you grew by over 900%. So really, really nice return over there. Obviously, right now, the short interest is very little because who's really betting seriously against Apple? I mean, I don't know who takes a short position. That's probably just people who playing the momentum game and day traders. But I seriously doubt you want to take a long-term negative view on Apple because that's highly unlikely to happen. And if it did, I think global economy will have an issue as well. The market cap over here, 2.81 trillion, I'll show you in a second. They used to obviously hit over 3 trillion already. Their PE ratio is currently just below 30. It has been above 30 in the past. But when I compare that, the most valuable company in the world with so much in their pipeline, and then compare it with companies with Palantir that have a tiny profit, and they are around 80, for me, that's definitely attractive. Now, Warren Buffett got in when they were just below 15, so that was a good time. But I still think 30 is reasonable given the company's revenues and financials they are producing. Another number that brings joy to any shareholder is the cash on hand. I mean, 62 billion currently. I mean, that's just unbelievable. And it's a huge amount of cash that they can obviously use to deploy for new projects, potentially mergers, acquisitions, or just use those funds to develop a new in-house project. So that's really good if you invest into a company that is cash rich, because they can deploy it, especially right now in times when borrowing is so expensive. A lot of companies scale back on expansion. So So if they have the cash themselves, they can finance themselves to grow at 0% interest basically. So that's really, really reassuring to see. Now, if you've been watching my videos in the past, you know that I'm a big fan of dividend investing. And while Apple does pay a dividend, that they have been growing in terms of percentage really nicely. I mean, over the last 5 years, an annual growth of 7.26%, which is nice. And they have been growing it consistently for the last 9 years. Overall, the dividend yield is still only 0.5%. So that's really, really little, especially when you think about it now in the bank, you can get 3, 4, 5% interest on your savings. For me, that's not really attractive as a dividend play. Different from a capital appreciation play where you invest to have a share price appreciation, but purely for dividends, I prefer investing in other companies. And it's very interesting if we compare Apple to the S&P 500. Now, obviously, Apple being the most valuable company in the world, it also has the biggest weighting inside the S&P 500 because it does have such a high market cap. So when we compare it over the last 10 years, I mean, the S&P 500 returned 219%, while Apple returned 1,154%. So you can see really outperforming the S&P, especially in the last few years. Basically, really, since Warren Buffett got in, that's why he's been so successful. He got in around 15, 16, 17, where he made his biggest investments into it. And since then, you can really see the wedge between those two and obviously the outperformance of Apple versus the S&P. But the question is, if Apple is already so valuable, the most valuable company in the world, how much more can they possibly grow, right? I mean, 2.8 trillion is a massive number in terms of market cap. Where can they go from here? And I asked myself the same question. But to be honest, when we look at the market cap development of Apple, you can really see sky is the limit. Because I remember I made a video about Apple back in 2020 when the first time they hit 1 trillion. Then shortly after they hit 2 trillion. And people said, oh my God, 2 trillion. It's impossible to grow from that. That's like a huge market cap. There's no way they're going to grow from there. Well, guess what? Just a few weeks ago, they hit 3 trillion. So my question is, if they hit 3 trillion, why not 5? Why not 6? Why not 10? Right? It's an arbitrary number. It's basically valuation, right? Like any price. When you look at any food items, right? You used to pay the price for Coca-Cola, 5 years ago. Now, in terms of percentage, is way more. The same with house prices. I remember not so long ago, real estate prices were much more affordable. These days, it's completely through the roof. And then we question ourselves again, well, how can they possibly increase from here? But guess what? We have inflation. Prices get more expensive over time. And so do valuations. So why would $3 trillion be the end? Why not 6? Why not 10? That's my question. It may or may not happen, but really I don't think we're in a position to say that's the highest price it will ever hit. I really think it will extend. And on that note, one reminder I want to make, because people say, well, the price is very little for Apple. It's only $178. Guys, this is the price after many stock splits. We can actually see that over here in Seeking Alpha history, the stock splits and how they've developed over time back in 87, 2000, 2005, 14 and 2020. And that basically means if the stocks wouldn't have been split by the time, the price now would be thousands and thousands of dollars per one share. But because the shares have been split into smaller parts, the overall price has also been lowered. So don't be fooled. Never look at the stock price by itself. It means nothing. That's just an indication. What matters is the price by the outstanding shares together multiplied gives you the value of the company. And then you can decide, obviously, depending on the financials, how much you are willing to pay for it. But that price by itself doesn't mean it's a cheap stock or expensive stock. Some companies have a price of 2,000 euros and might be underpriced, while other stocks might cost you $50, but actually they might be well overpriced. For example, Palantir would only cost you $15, but in fact the price per earnings now is 66. So it came down a little bit from last time I made the video of 80, but still, in my eyes, way overpriced for what it is. So yeah, that's just something to keep in mind. Before we go ahead, I do have a little gift for you. If you haven't signed up to my newsletter yet, then please do so. Use the link in the description below. I send out weekly newsletters, and as a sign-up bonus, you do get my free monthly budget review and net worth tracker, where you can basically see your monthly income, monthly expenses, your profit you made for the month, and then obviously with that, track your overall budget, your spendings by detail, as well as your net worth with all the various holdings you have in your crypto, your stocks, your investments, your property, etc. And bring it all to one number, your net worth, in order to track it over time. It will have some graphs there as well. So if you want to get it free of charge, then do sign up to my email list. Right, with this, let's have a look how Apple is actually making their money and where it comes from. Now, as you can see over here, the majority of the money that Apple makes is still coming from their hardware. Basically, you can see here in gray, most of it are their hardware devices. And obviously that's been for quite a while. The iPhone is by far still the biggest one, and it still has growth, 2% year over year. That's good to see. The MacBooks being another major contributor to their revenues with a 30% year on year growth. That's staggering. iPads actually also good to see. I thought actually iPads are phasing out, but they have seen a 13% growth year on year. And guys, let me know in the description below. Are you guys using an iPad? Every time I look at it, I'm debating. Do I need it? Do I not? And I don't know. For now, I haven't bought it. I think it's just a toy. I would love to use it, but at the same time, I really think having a laptop and having a phone is more than enough. But listen, let me know if you think otherwise. Then Apple Watch, who would have thought, actually contributes more than their MacBooks. These little watches are really on most people's wrist these days, it seems. And honestly, I bought one recently. I really love it. I never thought I would like it that much. I always thought it's gimmicky, but actually it's really powerful the more you start using it. But that number actually includes also AirPods and other wearables. So altogether, it's 8.8 billion. So it's not only the watch itself. And then we have another part that many people often overlook, and that's services. Actually, services contributes more than most other hardware products. Almost 21 billion comes from services. And that's really, really good to see. And obviously that will only continue to grow. And we can see obviously where the revenue goes, etc. But having a 25% net profit margin, I mean, that's really, really healthy for such a behemoth company. And honestly, for me, very nice to see and gives me confidence that they will continue to grow their income, their earning potential, their cash pile, and continue to redeploy that for R&D and other things to continue grow their business and stay relevant, which is very important. Now, diving a bit more into detail into the various product categories, we can see over here, overall quarterly revenue growth, as you can see, really nicely ramping up. I mean, to 2023, at some stage they hit 123 billion quarter revenue. I mean, that's just staggering revenues. It's so much more than entire companies do in a whole year. That's what they do in one quarter. It's just absolutely mind-boggling numbers when you think about it. We get so accustomed to reading billions now, but actually, when we really think about it, it's a staggering number. Now, when we see the overall development by product category, we can easily see that while iPhone continues to be the strongest revenue contributor, it is becoming less of an overall percentage share of that, and services in return is actually growing over time. So that really is great to see that they're moving towards more services. That's great that they complement each other. Now, looking at individual product categories, you can see obviously the iPhone growth continues, still reaching new highs. There's ups and downs. Obviously, whenever a new product comes out, they always peak and afterwards it goes down. But the overall trend is still very much growing over there. Now, as I said, I thought the iPad trend is going down while everybody having nice laptops and phones. And there was a bit of a dip over there, but still, after they came up with their own chips, it definitely gave a boost to iPad sales. Wearables, things like watch and other devices, definitely having a strong performance over time. As you can see here, it really became a major revenue driver for Apple. And that's really good to see that they continue to diversify away from just the iPhone, right? If they only depended on the iPhone, it would be very limiting because one day we may not use phones anymore. So the fact that they do have other revenue sources for me is really good to see. Of course, Macs continue to sell well over time as well. And you can see really here the boost after they came up with their own M1, M2 chips. That gave a huge boost to their overall sales. But overall, it continues to grow slightly. But yeah, still nice numbers over there. And here we see the most exciting growth prospects for the company in my eyes, and that's Apple Services. You can really see the growth over time. In the beginning, it contributed around 3.6 billion in a quarter. Now we reached a stage where in a quarter they made 21 billion in a quarter just with services. And that number, I'm very confident, will only continue to grow in the future. So with this, let's look at a few things that can be growth catalysts for Apple in the future. And the first one, and for me very exciting, is they're trying to diversify away on the dependence on China, and obviously opening up India as a whole new market to manufacture devices there in the future, but also to sell, because in the past they only used resellers. Now recently they opened the first few Apple stores over there, so they're really entering India that has so much untapped potential. I mean, they have now become the most populous country in the world, overtaking China, and there's so much future potential. And I really like the move by Apple to diversify away from China, because as we know, there is more and more friction between the US and China. Diversifying away, staying neutral, and not depending on one or the other, I think it's a very smart move for Apple long term. Another huge focus of Apple is obviously on privacy, and I really like how they're using it to sell your devices and the services to really place importance on privacy, which matters to everyone, right? We're becoming more and more transparent in an online world, but they really selling it in such a nice way and actually living up to it. And I really feel private being with Apple rather than using so many different operating systems. And I really like how they're selling this, making it a selling point rather than just a feature. But people actually pay good money to stay private. They recognize that, and they're living up to that. It's not just that they're saying it. In many ways, you can see how they integrate privacy into everything they do. Recently, how they opted out of tracking, so Facebook can't track you anymore as they used to do. Email opening rates makes it difficult for marketers, etc., and businesses to target you. But on the other hand, as a user, people are paying premium to get that privacy. Another future growth prospect is, of course, the recently revealed Apple Vision Pro. And if you haven't seen that device yet, I mean, when you see the demos, it looks really, really epic. There is apparently a little bit delay in manufacturing, And don't forget, that's the first device, right? So it might be still a little bit clunky, a little bit slow and cumbersome, but I think they're opening up a whole new device category, which honestly, I think in 10, 15, 20 years from now, everybody is going to be wearing in a different way or shape or form. But I don't think we're going to be running around with phones in our hands anymore. It's definitely going away. So Apple is leading the way here. Many other companies have tried in the past, like Facebook and others, but we'll see how Apple will implement this. But if they crack the code and people jump on this eventually, I really think once again, they're going to be in a leadership role over there and will obviously be able to capitalize revenue growth from that. And of course, another big feature everybody's talking about these days is AI. And interestingly enough, Apple hardly ever uses the word AI in any of their presentations, and I really enjoyed it because everybody's using it right now. And Apple says, well, AI has always been part of our products, of our algorithms, etc. There's AI baked into everything, right? Why to make it a separate feature? It's just something that every company is using anyways, so they don't directly use the word. However, recently there have been rumors saying that Apple will come up with their own Apple GPT competitor, so to say, which would be great. Remains to be seen if users can use it on the Safari tool, etc. We'll see how it works out. But obviously, Apple is very heavily investing into AI as well. They might not call it directly AI, but it's baked into their search functionality, into the algorithms, into Siri, into many ways how the operating system comes together. And obviously, once they come up with their own model, it's just going to give them yet another edge. And there's so many other things I haven't even touched on. Things like Apple Pay, which has been growing year on year massively. More and more people use Apple Pay, and that way they have their data. They know what people spend on. They make money on every transaction. So they're almost becoming like a bank in the future, right? And these are companies I really love because these are companies that are so diversified, yet they excel in every single thing. Because some companies, they try a bit of everything, but they're not really good at everything. Apple, if they go after a product category or service, they make sure they're the best in that field. If not, they drop it off and move on. And I really enjoyed it. Now, obviously, by now, you probably realized how I think about Apple. Yes, I love their products and ecosystem, etc., but I also love the stock and the company. And for me, yes, while I think 3 trillion is a huge number, and it's hard for me to imagine how it can possibly grow, at the same time, I remember how I said that 1, 2, 3, 4 years ago when they hit 1 trillion, 2 trillion. So why not to go to 5, 6, 7, 10 trillion? And honestly, I can really see how the market value will more than double in the coming years. I have no doubt about the future of Apple. They continue to innovate. Tim Cook is doing an awesome job. Of course, one day he might also move on, but I think there's so much talent within Apple that they will continue to innovate, grow, and pioneer new products and services. Now, what will I personally do? As I've shown you, I do have a small holdings of Apple myself. I would love to invest more of it, as recently they also came down a little bit in their pricing, so I would love to buy more of the stock. At the same time, they don't really pay a high dividend, and right now I'm more excited about investing into dividend-paying companies that have a high yield, so I can get passive income over time. And for that, as I've shown you, Apple is a little bit on the lower side. And let's be honest, I also have a budget like everybody else. And right now, we're trying to buy our next apartment. I want to buy more dividend stocks. Also, I want to buy a bit more Bitcoin in the near future because I think in 24, the price will definitely jump up. So, I can only invest so much. So while I love the company and the stock, I would love to invest more. Right now, I just don't have the funds because I'm already committed to other investments. Let me know in the comments which stock you want me to review next. And I'm happy to make a video on that. I hope you enjoyed the video. If you did, please give it a like, subscribe to the channel. It means the world to me. As always, stay healthy, get wealthy, and I see you in the next one. Ciao.